walks away after winning his 100th game as the head coach here at Notre Dame.
The reason I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth, I was born in this country. It isn't what you have, it's what you're taught about the values of life.
We trying to save souls.
So there's a rule in life that you're either growing or you're dying.
And like an old friend once said, we as Americans need to start winning again.
Everyone should ask this question. Am I willing to endure the pain and the suffering and the sacrifice it takes to be a champion?
Greetings. I'm Lou Holtz, and welcome to another edition of the Lou Holtz Podcast. We've had a lot of great guests in the past, but none of them excite me as much as our guest today, Danica Patrick. She discovered her love for racing at an early age, for training before she broke the barrier in American open wheel racing. She went on to make history as the most successful woman in the sport, earning the landmark victory at the 2008 Indy, Japan 300, and later competing on NASCAR's biggest stage, including the Daytona 500. Danica has become a powerful voice for empowerment and perseverance. She has encouraged young women and men alike to push past the various limitations that are placed on us. She embraces challenges and pursues their purpose with conviction. Through her ventures in business, media, and mentorship, she continues to champion a culture that uplifts hard work, character, and the belief that no challenge is too far ahead of you. She's a very talented young lady, and I'm privileged to have her on this show. Welcome, Danica Patrick. First question I want to ask you. Your career took you from go-karts at a younger age to becoming the most successful woman in American open wheel racing. How did those early experiences shape your drive and competitiveness as an individual?
Well, as a driver and an individual, I think both of those things were, they shaped me because I was doing competitive things really early. I think that when you get put in a position of being disappointed, being challenged, failing, having to work really hard, I think those things condition you to be able to endure more of life's hardships and challenges as you get older. I think, it's wonderful to have a storybook, easy, breezy life as a kid. And I had some of those things, but I also had a lot of challenges too. And I think that while it has its sort of moments of sadness, and I was definitely a lot of crying and things like that when I was a kid growing up, but I think it's made me into the person that I am today, and that I can handle difficult things. And I would much rather learn those lessons when I'm 10, 12, 15, 18, 21 than try and be challenged for the first time at 23 years old and 30 years old. And, I think that you're so ingrained in certain patterns, and it's harder and much less maybe acceptable to make mistakes when you get older. So I think that the life that I led from 10 years old, starting in go-karting, has just given me a lot of backbone, strength, and perseverance through difficult things, which inevitably happen.
She got her start driving go-karts at just 10 years old. In her debut race, she suffered a brake failure, causing her to collide with a concrete wall at 25 miles an hour. It didn't really matter, because in the preceding race, she rebounded all the way to a second-place finish, and eventually found her way to multiple track records, regional karting titles, and 3 World Karting Association Grand National Championships. She knew how to take the top step. She spent 3 years overseas in England, with arguably her most impressive performance coming in the 2000 Formula Ford Festival, where she finished second to future F1 driver Anthony Davidson.
Well, Danica, racing is a high-pressure, high-risk profession. How did you learn to handle fear, setbacks, and the constant challenges of being under the spotlight? Because you're under the spotlight all the time, but you've handled it well. What we'd like to know is, how do you do that?
I don't know if there's an exact formula to that. I think some people are just better at handling those things. But, as I said, as like a continuation of the answer just before, I think that, that's part of it. And then I think that, when you work really hard, people's criticisms, I feel like, don't hit as hard. When you know that you've done everything you possibly can, there's no room for people's words to sort of work their way in and infiltrate your mind and make you feel as bad. Sure, they can still hurt, but when you've done everything you can, I think that they just don't land as hard. It's when you don't do everything you can and you don't push as hard as possible and you don't go to the furthest extent, try new things, put the full effort in, that when someone says something, it kind of hits home because you didn't do everything that you could. You know that there are those moments that you could have worked a little harder when you were goofing off, or when you could have focused a little bit more instead of being distracted. So I think that always doing everything you possibly can to execute at the very highest level, whatever it is that you commit to, allows you to be able to have far more armor and confidence when you hear people say things that are not as nice as they should be.
Well, that's life. Much like coaching in sports, drivers rely on a team around them. How did you build trust with your crew? And what did teamwork teach you about leadership?
I mean, yeah, racing, obviously being just a single driver inside of the car out there, I think it's known that it's a team sport, but people don't quite understand how critical the preparation of the car is, the engine, the setup, the pit stops themselves. There's so many things that contribute to your level of success on track that you need to have the crew behind you. So I think really just showing your dedication and showing your commitment is what a team needs to see, because then it's a trickle-down effect of like, wow, if she's putting in that much effort, I better put in that much effort. And so then it just becomes more of a, you gel more and you're doing it out of love instead of fear. The whole saying of like work out of love and some make people work out of love, some make them work out of fear, and they both have some level of effectiveness. But I think when you work out of love and when you really, really care about each other, that's where there's no more clock-in moments. There's no more, I did enough, I've got to go do my own thing. It's like, wow, it's like letting your kid down, or like letting your parent down, or letting your best friend down. Those are the times that you work as hard as it possibly takes to be able to execute at your own personal highest level, no matter what that is.
How did you show the team that you genuinely appreciate them? Because just like any other sport, if your team isn't behind you, if you can't develop them and focus on being successful, how'd you go about doing that?
I mean, I never, one of the things that I didn't do is I feel like I didn't yell at my team when they do something wrong. I wasn't the one to come out of a pit stop and be like, come on guys, don't you know what you're doing? Like everybody knows what just happened. Just like if I go and make a mistake on track, they're not like, Danica, come on, don't you know what you're doing out there? So I think like not belittling people is important. And then humanizing and having a bit more of a face-to-face about it. I think that when you're not confrontational, but when you hit it head on and you talk through the problems, I think that it diffuses, instead of sort of everybody avoiding each other. They're more comfortable to be able to make those mistakes and know that there's still love, right? There's still teamwork. It's like, when you see on the field or the court or any other sport, when something, a basketball player misses a free throw and all the boys, they all still high five, or the girls still high five each other afterwards. It's like, you need to know that your team is behind you even when mistakes are made, and they are. But I think that, the execution goes back to, I can remember one time before the Indy 500 very vividly, going to the garage and talking to the team before and just sort of like giving them a little pep talk of like, let's be calm, let's execute well, let's go slow to go fast, let's just not make mistakes today. and just letting them know that there was a vested effort for all of us, and that we were all on the same page before it was go time.
Well, you've had so much success. Was there ever a time where you got discouraged, and how did you handle that? We all have ups and we have downs. What I'm always interested in, how do you handle the downs?
Yeah.
Everybody knows how to handle the ups, Danica.
Well, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So at times it comes with having a different approach. Sometimes it's like, okay, I need to approach this in a totally different way. Let's go at it this way. But I mean, there was definitely some sad or difficult moments experienced in the privacy of my own motorhome at the tracks, for sure. And sometimes in offices of engineers or crew chiefs or people like that, where you're really trying to figure things out. But for myself personally, when I would start to doubt myself, and trust me, that happened throughout my entire career, from time to time, for sure. I had to rely on my body of work. I had to remember that it was my entire go-karting career that got me to finally get into a car. And then I had to remember that was all of those experiences within the lower formulas that earned me the right to drive an Indy car. And then it was all of those races in IndyCar that allowed me the ability to still be there 5 years later. And then after that, it was all the years in IndyCar that earned me the right to drive NASCAR, and the experiences I had that allowed me to stay in that for so long. So it was almost like I had to remind myself that I wasn't a fluke, or that it wasn't by luck that I was there. I had to remind myself that it took 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years of all the things that I had done to get me where I'm at. So it's like I had to have like my little internal reflection pep rally every now and again.
Well, we're talking about racing, but the same things you're talking about are things that an individual need to apply in their everyday life. Now, you've transitioned from auto racing into broadcasting, business, and even winemaking. How do you approach reinvesting yourself while staying true to the things that you really believe in? Because I know to go from racing into broadcasting and the list goes on and on. How do you do that?
I've been very fortunate in my life that I've made passions into businesses. And, it was a natural transition to go from being the one interviewing to the one interviewing or talking about the sport itself. But I tell you, it's a whole lot different. It is like all the pressure is on as soon as the red light goes on. And in racing, I always felt like, yes, that's when the pressure happens, but the nerves drop out. When you're in the car and you're racing, once you strap in, that's when you're just kind of in the zone. You're no longer nervous anymore. You're working, you're doing, you're busy, you're calculating, you're thinking ahead, you're planning, you're feeling the car, you're being in the moment. So all of those nerves go away, but when you're behind the camera, that's when you're on. And so it's a totally different perspective to be the one interviewing and being the one on the other side of the camera, trying to make sure that you educate the viewer and speak intelligently and know more than you need to. I think that's also what I've learned, is that you don't need to just fill airtime. Like when you're being interviewed, quick little short answers are not always the best. You want a little meat to it. You want some stories to it. But when you're being the one interviewing, or when you're talking about something going on, just add what's necessary, not anymore. The stars are the ones that we're featuring. And so I've kind of learned that along the way. But everything else too has just been an extension of all my passions as well. I would describe myself as someone that has a lot of different interests, and I have a lot of bandwidth in a lot of different parts of my personality. So, I've always loved food and wine. So I bought the vineyard that is now Somnium Winery back in 2009. So that's been a very, very long project, as well as some of the other things that I've taken on are just really just personal interests that I've expanded, whether it be the podcast or clothing for a little while, or candles, or politics, or anything that I've jumped into, fitness. They're all just things that I really love. And I just have a very entrepreneurial mind. And so I always think to myself, how do I scale this? Like, how do I make a business out of this? What can I do? How can I share this? How can I educate on this? So that's where all the other businesses come from. So I think that, for me, I that's always what I try and tell people too, is that whatever you love and you're interested in, try and dream the idea of what would it look like at the furthest extent. Where could you take that? Because that's kind of what I've done with all of my interests in my whole life, whether they be the one I was known for, racing, or the others.
Well, faith, discipline, and mindset are often central themes in sports. What role have these played in both your career on the track and beyond?
Well, I mean, faith being the first one you mentioned probably plays, the most critical one, which when I was young and in go-karting, I moved to England when I was 16. I left high school my junior year. I pretty much have a sophomore level education. But, the youth is wasted on the young because I mostly want to learn now. So kind of funny. But I moved over there when I was really young, and I came back when I was 19. And I didn't have a ride. I didn't have anything going on. And I'm at the most critical years of my career as a race car driver to develop into a professional. So 19, 20 years old, I don't have a ride. And I guess I described it, what the words I used back then were blind faith is what I used. I just had blind faith that I knew it was going to work. And I had too much to offer someone for me to not get the opportunity to go out there and show them what I can do. And I had no idea what that would look like. Like, that wasn't part of my vision. I just knew that it could be a really big deal if someone would give me the chance. And so that person was Bobby Rahal. He was the one that really did it. He was the one that really gave me the shot when I came back from England, and I put him on the spot and just, put him in a proposition situation of having a sponsor if he had a Formula Atlantic team for me, which was something I did here. But I never spoke to that person again after they told me that was possible. So it was like the most magical little lie. And he said yes. And then we did a press conference 2 weeks later at Laguna Seca. This was a question I asked him at Milwaukee, at the Milwaukee Mile. 2 weeks later, we were in Laguna Seca doing a press conference, and everybody told him he was crazy. And it's probably one of the things that I'm most happy about, is that I could make him not look crazy. I can make him look brilliant. And I almost won the Indy 500 the next year. So actually, it would have been 2 years later, because I did 2 years of Atlantics and then IndyCar. But I like that I didn't make him look silly for that decision. So, but blind faith was what it was. The age-old kind of question about that is it the faith and the belief that manifests it into reality? Or was it that it already existed and that you knew it? Like, is there some predestined pathway for us? Is there something coming that we sense is there? Or is it our blind faith at some times, or belief in something that makes it come to fruition? And I don't know. We probably will never know.
Well, it's been my experience that people have to have a faith. Now, sometimes the faith in themselves, sometimes it's in other people, sometimes the faith is in Jesus Christ. It's whatever you believe. But any great quarterback, you're going to find either has a great faith in themselves or great faith in God. So those things happen. But you were not only the first woman, very successful, but I bet you had an awful lot of obstacles to overcome. The people doubted you all the time because you're a woman, and they resented you being successful. How do you handle that?
Sure. Well, I believe, and this is not something that I knew back then when I was younger. I am not that young anymore, so young.
Hey, you look very young. You look young and beautiful.
Well, thank you very much. But this is like an evolution of growth and learning in life, that perception is reality. I really believe that's true. And I was fortunate enough that my parents and my environment provided me the belief that the perspective that I should focus on was the positive, was that all of the reasons why I was getting more of an opportunity because I was a girl and because I was different. And while there were challenges, there was at least equal and opposite, if not more, opportunities because of being different. And so those are the things that I focused on. You know, I'm not ignorant or oblivious. I knew that there were challenges that I faced more so because of being a girl, but I really believed I had more opportunities because I was as well. And so those are the things that I focused on. And I guess also I enjoyed being different. I enjoy being different. I would rather be one in a million than one of a million. I would rather handle the pressure of, you know, the women on my back or whatever it would be, or, you know, public judgment or whatever those things were throughout my career than being, you know, insignificant or invisible to some degree. I'd rather have the spotlight and deal with it.
Well,
I'd rather have the ball, you know, give me the ball at the end.
Well, today many fans see you as more than a driver. They see you as a role model. How do you balance that responsibility with living authentically?
Yeah. Well, nobody's perfect, and I think that we are all pretty aware of that. And I think that it goes down to also sort of what I was mentioning earlier about putting in your best effort. It's like, if I am myself and I make good decisions and I, you know, enjoy my life and take the general public into consideration and other people, like even just the whatever that I'm doing, you know, I whether somebody likes me or not is not really up to me. We all are going to have absolute judgments on others based on our upbringing, based on what we're comfortable with, based on the rules and regulations we put on ourselves to believe to be true. And you're always going to deal with them. You're never going to make everyone happy if you're completely yourself. Because if you're completely yourself, you're going to be memorable. And if you're going to be memorable, you're not going to be exactly like everyone else. And that is exactly what makes you memorable. When you try and be like someone else, you're just an average copy. You'll never be the best at it. So if you are just yourself, though, you're memorable. And those differences are what makes you memorable. So go with it and own it and live honorably and live with integrity, mostly that you are being who you are.
Well, that is such great advice. Wish I had heard that many, many years ago. Now, the theme of our show is restoring America's culture, because that's one of the things we've been doing on the show. The culture of this country has changed. Maybe it's because of immigration, maybe it's because of politics. I don't know. But I do know this. The culture is critical. And if you don't have a good culture, and in sports you learn how to win, you learn how to be competitive, you learn how to succeed, but then you learn how to build a culture. And a culture is where you take pride in certain things you believe in. What do you think we have to do to bring the culture of this country back?
I think that sports plays a huge role, a huge influence, and is a microcosm of the macro, which is people need to win and lose. There needs to be better and worse. There needs to be something to shoot for. I don't think that we're all exactly the same. I don't think men and women are the same. I'm glad they're not. And there's not the same between the winner and the loser, other than you're participating perhaps in the same event or doing the same thing. But I think that when we don't have something to shoot for, you know, capitalism is another example of that. If you have the opportunity to build, succeed, grow, and achieve greater things than someone else, then it takes away the motivation. You know, socialism does not bring you into a place that's inspiring. That's a complacent state. So have trophies, have winners, have losers, have capitalism, have extremely successful people, and have something to aspire to. We should all have something that we should want to become better like or better than we are. And so, you know, I think that I think that's one of the elements that makes this country great. You know, I think this country is really built on that, built on capitalism, and built on being able to achieve great things beyond what someone else would be able to achieve somewhere else in some other country. So, you know, you know, it's always said about sports and how everybody gets their participation trophy or ribbon. And I think going back to those places where you don't get it is good, because at the end of the day, it's best to learn what you're good at and not good at. That's when you're going to find the most joy. Like, I learned plenty of things when I was younger that I wasn't good at, so I don't like doing them. So let's learn about the things that I am good at, because when you're good at something, you usually enjoy doing it. When you enjoy doing it, you put in a lot of effort and time. You don't care how much time and effort. You do it for the joy of it, for the love of it. And then magical things happen, and all of a sudden you become a professional athlete because you love throwing the ball around in the backyard. You know, that's the kind of thing that happens. And so you can do that with any profession. It's just a very obvious example, sports. So I think that's a way to really encourage hard work, dedication, sacrifice, and, you know, as like the great, you know, some of the great philosophers of our time have said, it's like, you know, sacrifice is something that is critical to being able to have confidence and have, you know, belief in yourself. So find something to sacrifice for.
Well, you express yourself so very eloquently, and you're you can communicate with people. The last question I have to ask, and this isn't on the chart, it's mine.
Okay.
Do you ever have any desire to go into politics? Because you express yourself so eloquently, and you've had so much success, and yet you're listening to you express yourself. You're a natural politician.
Oh, well, first off, thank you very much. It's really, really flattering. And, you know, I had the great opportunity to be able to play a part in the election at the end of last year. And, you know, Tulsi Gabbard in particular took me under her wing, and I ended up campaigning in every swing state, and then campaigning with her the whole last week before Election Day, and was able to, you know, have such great opportunities to interview so many amazing people, but, you know, also just speak for, it was the first time I'd felt like a real calling for something. And you asked about culture in this country, and that's really what we're speaking to. We're speaking about how do we, there's so many ways to make America great again. And it's not just with your president, although it's an incredible opportunity to make the country greater again, but we all have an opportunity to make this country greater again, or make a sport greater again, or make a job better again, or make a city better again. We all have that opportunity. And so I just felt a real calling to bring in a word of reason, to bring in some rational thought again, and just getting back to, you know, the foundational things that built this fantastic country that so many people want to come to. I love that there are people from other countries, but there's a process for that, of which could probably be improved upon. But, you know, we love that about this country, but it's the land of opportunity. And so I appreciate you saying that. I have no idea, although I enjoyed my time. And when I feel something that's a calling, I will answer. And so if there is another call in politics that I feel like I need to, I will answer it. At this point in time, I'm not sure what that is, but my intro into being into politics made me realize that, you know what? Politics does make a difference, and the leaders of our country do make a difference, and the rules of this country and what's allowed in this country does make a difference. And so I'm grateful for the people that are in office right now. They're doing great things. Everybody from the president to Tulsi to Bobby Kennedy to all of the great people that I was able to meet along the way. There's a lot of people doing really good work. And, you know, one of the things that I also saw that feels like a little bit of maybe something that will help me is that I've been meeting a lot of people along the way, going and going on the Hill and talking about various different sort of things that I'm working on, businesses or ideas. And there's a lot of business people, men and women, that are going from their bigwig job to serving for a term or two in office. And I really think that's what was meant to happen within the administration, within senators and governors, is that it's not a lifetime job. It's like, go get your experience, do great things, and then share that by helping to mold and build a great state, a great city, and a great country around you, and share that knowledge and leadership.
Well, thank you. You know, several years ago, they asked me to do this show. Never did I realize I'd have the privilege to have you on this show. But it's been a distinct pleasure just to listen to you express yourself. I know you said you dropped out of school when you were a junior, but boy, I tell you what, we should have more people do that because you expressed yourself so well. But thank you for joining us today. And remember this, we're here to help you. We admire what you've done. We appreciate what you've done. But above all, we're here to help you. Thank you again for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. Hope you'll join us again on the next Lou Holtz podcast, where I can't say that we can duplicate a guest near as entertaining or as intelligent as well-spoken as the one today, but we will try. Thank you for being with us. God bless you.
And he walks away after winning his 100th game as the head coach here at Notre Dame.
The reason I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth, I was born in this country. It isn't what you have, it's what you're taught about the values of life.
We trying to save souls.
See, there's a rule in life that said you're either growing or you're dying. And like an old friend once said, we as Americans need to start winning again.
Everyone should ask this question. Am I willing to endure the pain and the suffering and the sacrifice it takes to be a champion?